Oh, it is. Good evening. We'll go ahead and 7.0 reconvene open session. 7.1 call to order. The Board of Trustees are hereby reconvening the open session at 5:34 p.m. 7.2 roll call. Trustees to identify themselves by first and last name to formally establish form. Jordan Zarati, Trust Area 5, Running Springs, Arrow Bear Lake, Green Valley Lake.
Dana Ridland, Trust Area 2. Cindy Gardner, Trustee Area 3.
Scott Pratt, Trustee Area 4. Dr. William Millinger, Trustee Area 1.
We have our quorum. Moving on to 7.3, the Pledge of Allegiance. I would like to ask our immediate past president, Dr. William Millinger, to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance.
We stand, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Bill. 8.0 closed session reports. 8.1 announcement of reportable actions taken during closed session. The Board of Trustees approved the full expulsion case number 02-23/24. That was 5-0. The board also approved a stipulated expulsion for case number 03-23/34. Again, that was unanimous. Moving on to 9.0 public testimony. 9.1 public comment period for items listed on this agenda and non-agenda items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the governing board. The board comment period is administered by state law and is the point in the meeting set aside for members of the public to share their opinions with the board. Open meeting laws do not permit the board to engage in dialogue or answer questions, though it may not take actions on non-agenda issues raised at the public comment period. The board, for example, may refer any matter to the superintendent for review or take action to direct staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda. Protocols for speakers. Any person who wishes to address the governing board on agenda and non-agenda items within the subject matter of their jurisdiction must complete a green speakers form and submit it to the executive secretary to the superintendent before the meeting is called to order. Individual speakers are allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda item. The board limits the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. Speakers who have complaints against board members or staff are encouraged to seek resolution to those complaints by using the Room of the World Unified School District written complaint procedure rather than orally addressing them at a board meeting. The board will not respond to such complaints until the applicable complaint procedure, BP/AR 1312.1, has been followed and has reached the board level. Where a complaint concerns a district employee identifiable by name, position, or other facts, the board cannot respond until proper written notice has been given to the employee pursuant to Government Code Section 5497. Decorum. The governing board is interested in the ideas and opinions of all stakeholders and endeavors to incorporate community views into its deliberations and decisions. At the same time, it must be able to conduct its business in an organized and efficient manner, free from material disruption. Therefore, in accordance to Board Bylaw 9323 and Government Code Section 54957.9, audience members may not disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct of this meeting. Open meeting laws do not confer any privilege or protection for expression beyond that otherwise provided by law. The public's understanding and cooperation are appreciated. 9.2 public comments. And first up, we have Carol Kinzel representing staff and CSUSB regarding Nature Center and beyond. Carol, you may come on.
So we're going to the moon. Beyond. And there's stuff in that chair, so I'm gonna sit in this chair. Okay. What do I need to turn it on?
Push that button until the red light.
Push the buttons. There, it's on. All right, great. I'm Carol Kinzel, and I've spoken to you about Nature Center before. And should I put it closer to me? Thank you. That was a very sly little move it, Carol. I have gotten to meet and form a relationship with Dr. Jennifer B. Alford. She is the interim chair at the Department of Geography and Environmental Studies, Associate Professor of Geography and Environmental Studies, Director of Cal State University San Bernardino Institute for Watershed Resiliency. Remember that, watershed resiliency. Associate Director of Research, CSU Water, California Environmental Health Certified person, and she happens to work at the university. And so yesterday, Dr. Rutherford and I were going to have a meeting. His schedule did not allow it, and we were talking on the phone, and as you know, around here, that really sucks. So, to put it bluntly. So what I was going to talk to him about was the Nutrition Center, show you pictures, things like that, but more importantly, in getting to know Dr. Alfred, she has this program started through state, local, federal agencies, educators, researchers, non-governmental, and I'm reading from her notes that she gave me, non-governmental organizations and interested community members that have come together in partnership to maintain and restore the vast resources provided by our local mountains and facilities. Our mission is to collaboratively implement projects across boundaries in order to support and sustain resilient ecosystems, formalizing the partnership in 2024 going forward. And I'm going quickly because of the 3-minute limit. She has started at the university, the Institute for Watershed Resiliency. The IWR's mission is to lead and advocate for community university partnerships that seek to mitigate and resolve complex water resource issues across diverse social, economic, and environmental landscapes through environmental education and stewardship. What she needs is a place like a nature center. And they have funding for this program. This program would bring to our students, to our staff, to our community, but primarily to our students, college level geography, environmental studies, watershed resiliency, monthly workshops, seminars for teachers. It would be us as a school district hooking in with California State University, San Bernardino. What they need for water monitoring is a place to have their things, to set up their stuff. When I met her, and I have no time left, but I met her at SOFA. She has been working with against the Nestle company with us, and this would be an absolute, and they have funding. Might I mention, they have funding, an absolute marvelous thing for us to be able to bring to our school district. This is to be continued. This is like from heavens.
Thank you.
So what I have for you, sir, it's not the official proposal, but it is her cliff notes that she gave me. So when we would have met, and then info on me on the back. And thank you guys.
Thank you, Carol. Up next, we have Deborah Knowlton Sarnecki, PhD, representing SELF regarding student achievement. Sure.
Well, finally, I come here with good news. As you know from previous presentations, I am concerned about student achievement, the primary purpose of everything that an education system does. Generally, I tell you how underperforming the students are doing academically. Well, this year, for the first time, students are improving. As always, I will focus on the 11th grade scores because they represent the culmination of a RIM education. In English language arts, California's state average actually decreased approximately 1 percentage point to just over 46% for 11th graders meeting or exceeding the standard. But over 54% of RIM's 11th graders met or exceeded the standard, an improvement of almost 10% from last year. In math, the state standard increased approximately 1% to over 34% of 11th grade students meeting or exceeding the standard. At RIM, over 18% met or exceeded the standard, an improvement of over 2%. Although the math improvement is not as dramatic as the English language arts, it is still going in the right direction. In spite of this good news, it is still appalling that fewer than 50% of students statewide can meet the English language arts standard. But it is great that more than 50% of RIM students can achieve this goal. As for math, just over 1/3 of the students can meet this mathematics standard statewide. That means 2/3 of the students cannot. Unfortunately, at RIM, fewer than 1 in 5 students can successfully meet the standard, meaning that over 80% of the students cannot. Math is such a critical skill for modern employment and economic survival that it is really imperative that the learning gaps be corrected. I hope the English language arts and math faculties will keep striving for a goal of at least 90% success rate. In conclusion, I just want to encourage the teachers and administrators at all of their schools in RIM Unified to continue to review, reflect, modify their instruction and curriculum so that students at all grade levels can continue to improve, so that the RIM graduates have the skills to accomplish their lifelong goals. As a side note, I gave the board members some information regarding California's budget that I felt you should be aware of. Anyway, happy holidays to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to 9.3, RIM Teachers Association, RTA representatives. Do we have any representatives? Wonderful. Come on up.
Does revenue? Yes, revenue's on. Good evening, board members. I hope everyone is having a wonderful holiday season. As you know, there is a proposal from RTA on the table. I hope you support this proposal as we need to attract and retain teachers. I know from conversations with some of our talented and energetic new teachers, we really found some good ones, that their time at RIM will be short-lived. They are waiting for positions to open up in nearby higher paying districts such as Big Bear. We have teachers who currently commute and have told me they would move to our area, buy a house, raise their family here if the pay was higher, but they just can't do it as it is. As it is, they do not feel they will work for RIM long enough to relocate their families here. The district needs these teachers to stay. I know the perception is that we would have to cut money elsewhere in order to support a pay raise that would be competitive with other districts. This is not the case. ROWUSD has a history of spending much less than was budgeted each year. It's a good thing, but much less. Our reserve is way over what is required by the state. State requires a 3% reserve, and we are in the double digits. We just received a $200,000 community schools grant that can be ongoing. Last year, California fully funded an unprecedented amount of 13.26% for COLA. This funding was partially fundable due to an increase in base funding for ADA. This unprecedented 13.26% COLA came in after negotiations were finished last year. The money has not been spent. The threat of declining enrollment seems to have leveled out as people are moving out of the city and into rural areas. ROWUSD is in great financial shape, and now is the time, this year, to make our salaries competitive. The teacher shortage is coming, and we have to attract and retain quality teachers. I'm also not sure if you guys know that our new teachers don't receive a paycheck until October 1st. So they're already very on the low end of the pay scale, and then they don't get paid till October 1st. I don't think we have the manpower right now to fix that, but it would be wonderful if we could help our new teachers by getting them a September paycheck. That's it. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Thank you, Madam President. Do we have any representatives from CSEA? No speakers at this time. Moving on to 10.1, we have announcements from our superintendent, revision of the attached board policies, BPs, and exhibits B's first reading.
Thank you. And congratulations for finishing up a great term as president. Dr. Millinder, it was a pleasure working with you. Mr. Zarate, I look forward to our work together in the coming weeks and months. I've been spending my time visiting at schools and with focus groups, beginning to collect a vision for the district and assemble a description of the incoming superintendent, what traits and characteristics that we look for that will predict success. It's been a pleasure meeting with people throughout the district. We'll continue that. Commercial for the survey, students too. There's an online survey on the district website. It closes on December 19th. You're invited to go in. It'll take you 5 minutes to complete it. We'd love to have your voice in the mix as we start on this search. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have anything on the revision of the attached board policies and exhibits?
Brought for the board's consideration, seeing no comments.
Wonderful, thank you. We'll move on to the superintendent again for the Williams annual report for fiscal year 2023.
And I will defer to Jenny to give any highlights of that. I think it's your annual standard report of the Williams Act showing all reports. So are there any questions from the board?
Shannon.
That would be Shannon, is what I meant to say. But if there are any questions from the board, otherwise we'll accept it as information on our quarterly report. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to 11.0 board reports and presentations. 11.1 governing board members. I'll go ahead and start us off tonight, and we'll go down the line. I do want to thank our immediate past president, Dr. William Mellinger. He's done a wonderful job leading us through a tough year. I will do my level best coming up in this 2024 calendar year. I'm looking forward to the year, but there are a lot of challenges that our district will face. We are in the midst of a superintendent search right now, and we will have a new superintendent come on board within the next year. We have challenges coming ahead too, with the legislative analyst office projecting a $68 billion deficit, which is major. That is far below what was in the original plan that I think the state had intended to be on. So that's unfortunate, but it means that advocacy will be really important this year for school districts and school boards, especially pushing up to our local legislators to try to preserve local education funding as much as possible, because what cuts are being talked about are really going to come down to the amount of advocacy that's done. Unfortunately, it's not looking great for the projected year, but we have hopes, high hopes for the January budget proposal from Governor Newsom. Hopefully he will work to preserve as much programming as possible for our students. We do know that we have a much better rainy day fund. So last time that this happened was the Great Recession, and we had no rainy day fund really for education. So we're in a much better position to weather this storm. However, it is the most severe looking outlook since the Great Recession. So I have, again, high hopes, and I know that our board will be working on advocacy for preserving as much programming as possible, because at the end of the day, whatever funding that we can keep and preserve will ultimately benefit our students. And we know that as a rural school district, we get the short end of that stick. We often get far less funding than other rural school districts, and even large districts across, just right down the hill or in the high desert. So those are tough things that we'll have to contend with. But again, we will be working on advocacy this year, and it would be wonderful to have all of your support as we do that, because our voices are, we'll do the best to leverage our own voices, but it's really important if our communities are pushing upward too, calling our elected representatives with the same message that we're pushing up, and that's that school districts like ours shouldn't be left behind. So here's hoping for a great upcoming year. There's going to be a lot of change. So I'll go ahead and leave it at that, and I hope you all have a wonderful winter break. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just gonna add a little bit to what Jordan had just said as far as the financial state of things in the state, as well as for us. In recent years, there's been a lot of new initiatives that Governor Newsom has required of school districts, and those new initiatives have included one-time funding, non-perpetual funding. So we have obligatory programs such as ELOP that we are in the process of putting together. And it's pretty scary to know that our state budget is facing challenges, and the way school districts are funded are kind of backwards. We have to pay for programs, we need to put in programs, and then we find out later how much money we'll actually receive. So with that wickety-wackety way of funding, it puts us, especially as a small school district, in a very precarious position. So we are definitely in wait and see mode based on recent news from the state. Actual revenue received by the state this past year is way below anticipated. So our numbers are moving like crazy downwards. So we're ready to hear what's going on, and then we'll have to probably do a lot of pivoting in terms of how we move forward. And that is definitely scary. We want to provide the best solutions possible for our students, and we're going to do the best that we can. Yeah, just wanted to just talk about the one-time programs. As far as my recent activity, last Thursday and Friday, I went to the high school, saw magnificent performances by RAM and MPH's bands, and by RIM High Choir. And the turnout was phenomenal, and the performances were even better. Last year, I went to those performances at this time this year, and MPH, I walked in just as the performance was starting. I didn't get the intro, and I could have sworn that MPH's intro band was their advanced band. They were so far along. And then their advanced band got a chance to be able to perform with the Woodwind Ensemble, and it was just fun. The energy between Carrie Stebbing and Emily Gregg, the MPH's and RIM's band teachers it was phenomenal, and the energy was great. The crowd was wonderful, and it was just glorious. So I'm very appreciative of the efforts, and it was very gratifying to see the students performing at such a level. We have an amazing pianist at the high school who accompanied the choir, and then also had a solo that was phenomenal. And so anybody who might be hearing in, there's going to be another performance with brass ensemble coming up the hill on January 12th, save the date. It's going to be fantastic. And there will be another free performance at the high school. So got the chance this week to volunteer at MPH's holiday shop. On Monday, it was in the cafeteria during the lunches. It was great to see the students just doing their lunch thing and having fun. Considering years of COVID and isolation, being able to see students happily interacting and having that social time so healthy, so wonderful. It's great to see us going in that direction. Over the years, MPH has gotten a bad rap as being not a great place for kids. You see what's going on at lunchtime, it's the exact opposite. To be able to actually see students in that habitat, being able to be carefree, happy individuals, to see them interacting. Nobody sat by themselves. It was just a wonderful thing to see. So I found that to be incredibly gratifying. Love being in the holiday shop, the number of thank yous and pleases, and just the kids were really well behaved. And that's, again, a testament to our community and to our schools and to our students. So that was lovely. Last thing I want to talk about is it's December. It's been a rough year. We've had Snowmageddon, following years of COVID, and a lot of trauma that people have experienced. I'm worried about our staff. I'm worried about our, just all of our employees, as well as along with our students, and making sure that they're taking care of themselves. There's been various situations I know that staff has brought to my attention, families where kids don't have beds to sleep on, families whose are no longer able to stay in their houses. These teachers, staff are working really hard to try and help the community members, and they take on a lot. And I just want to put out a reminder to everybody that you really have to take care of yourself first. Self-care is incredibly important. If you basically deplete yourself, you're not going to be in a position to help. So after next week, hopefully you'll get some time off with the holidays. Take care of yourselves, enjoy. Be able to have some precious time with family and friends, and make sure that you are taking care of yourself. Don't put yourself on hold. It's really important. Happy holidays. Look forward to seeing everybody next year, and a great appreciation for all the hard effort of both student and staff, and just keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. We'll go ahead with Cindy.
Hi, so first of all, happy holidays, everybody. I hope everybody has an awesome couple weeks off to reset, relax with friends and family, and really enjoy the spirit of gifting and loving and just being with family and friends, because that's the best feeling ever. I know I'm excited. My son's coming home for a week, and I know I haven't seen him for a while, so I'm really, really happy about that. The other week, I went to the California State Board Association's Delegate Assembly. Interesting, the CSBA has decided to start doing what they call breakout sessions on each of their policy pillars, and I was put on the improving conditions of learning conditions of students. And this time, the breakout session had a focus of that particular policy pillar through mental health. So we discussed what are we doing, what are the programs, what are the challenges. Funding, of course, is a big source. I want to thank Mrs. Whiteside. I did call her because I needed help on my homework to bring to the policy pillar. And she was great in giving me what is happening in our district in terms of mental health in relation to improving learning conditions of children. So it was a really great session for that. And then during the conference, I went to some interesting workshops on governing, good board governance, because I always need self-reflection, because I need some help, always do. And also some workshops on how to handle some of the controversies that are occurring during school board meetings now. Also went into small school table talks, because even though we're not technically a small school, I like to hear what's going on, and it's the same challenges as we have. In May, we did breakout sessions in the Delegate Assembly, believe it or not, about the late start bill. CSB is now doing these breakout sessions to collect information. I think we also sent out a survey to collect information about what the impact of some of these legislative pieces that are passed, and what the unintended consequences, both positive and negative, are regarding these bills. With that, I'm going to filter it down to SANDABs. One of the interesting ongoing issues is the late start bill. There are districts that are desperately trying to reclassify themselves as rural, or in some way to make themselves exempt because it's not working for them. In some districts, they were able to transition with it. So it's an ongoing issue that is really challenging so many districts. So the whole idea of one piece of cookie cutter legislation that is passed without money attached to it really is challenging. And I appreciate CSBA really taking a deep dive and presenting information to the legislators about what their bills do to school districts. So that was good. In respect to what I'm doing last week, every day, I was at LAE doing their reindeer lane, their holiday shop, watching our little TK Kinders shop. Oh my gosh, they are so funny. And they were ready to shop. And I want to give a shout out to Mr. Gomes twins, because they were really good shoppers, especially the one she took one of every single thing. And I realized that maybe mommy and daddy would not be okay with like $100 being spent. So we had to reshop with them. So it was really cute to see the kids be so proud of what they chose. And then we did gift wrapping, and they wrapped their gifts, and it was just adorable. So that was really, really fun to get back and get my hands dirty, so to speak, in that level again. Went to wrestling tournament. I saw Mr. Kraft there, but it was great because RIM won that tournament for the first time since 2016. Screamed my brains out. Jedediah, I mean, geez, that was an exciting match. Roman, amazing wrestler. So really appreciated. And Mrs. Beresford was there, which was touching, really touching to have her come after the death of her husband, Mr. Beresford, for whom this tournament is named for. I went to, of course, the Jazz and Choir. I really enjoyed RIM High School students coming on stage and intermixing with the MPH students to be a bigger jazz band, and you didn't, there was no leveling off of the talent. It was just amazing. It sounded like this very professional jazz band, even though the middle school students were and just enjoyed it so much. We had really talented really talented kids, and I appreciate all of their work that goes into such a production by the students and by the teachers. Great job, Carrie Stebbing and Emily Gray, for putting that on. Went to soccer. Unfortunately, girls soccer lost, but they have some feisty women on that soccer team. So I know they're going to have a good season. It's still young. And boys soccer, what a change! It's beautiful soccer. They pass the feet. It's really beautiful soccer. So got to give out a shout out to all those boys and the coaches, because it was really fun to watch that soccer game. So it was just enjoying all the different activities and opportunities to really get to know kids and see them do their best stuff ever, not just in the classroom, but extracurricular wise. The fun stuff, as they say, this more engaging things, why you come to school kind of stuff. So I do want to thank the PTAs across the mountain who are providing the holiday shop. VOE is having theirs tomorrow, because it is a lot of work and challenging, because volunteers are hard to come by these days. And we appreciate all the volunteers, whether you're on booster clubs for sports, helping out the band, or a PTA or a school site council parent volunteer. Thank you so much for your volunteerism. Appreciate it. That's it.
Thank you, Trustee Gardner. Scott?
Thank you. Yeah, I was at the wrestling too, and it was a good event. But I think RIM actually has a chance to win CIF this year. So I'm going to put the challenge out to them to do that. I did not make it to the band event, but I am going to make an extra effort to be there on the 12th. I would love to see that. So hopefully I can make that. This last week was a tough situation for MPH in the high school. And I know for many parents, it was tough because sometimes you don't feel like your answers that you receive are the answers that you want, or you might not get your questions answered correctly. But the staff that we have right now, the leaders that we have all over in every school are outstanding. So I'm more confident than I think I've been in a long time that we have the right people in place and they do an outstanding job. So I'm really happy with that. And I know that as we move forward towards a bond and things like that, we can make other improvements too that are going to be safe for our students and our staff. And I'm very hopeful in this new year that we can make all these changes happen, and we can see that these will happen in the future so that our kids are safe, our staff is safe. And we can continue to improve our test scores as a result of that and just make things overall better day by day in this district. And that's my goal. And I do also support that we will continue to work hard to get our teachers and staff the pay raises that they need and deserve. We need to make sure that we do everything we can to work together and make that happen. Many times when we're up here and we're talking and we're discussing these things, I've been married almost 35 years and I still don't say the right things at home, much less when I get up here and I'm trying to explain and talk about something. I realize I have to keep it short and precise so that when I'm going off tangent a little bit, it doesn't get construed as something that I don't mean to say. You want to be informative, but and supportive, and that's what I am. I want to support our staff and teachers and see that they get what they deserve. And I know that our cabinet is working hard to do that, and I know that our TA is working hard to do that. So I support that. I also just want to wish everybody a well-deserved break. I know whenever break came around for me as a teacher, it was really nice to get that time off and to kind of relax. And I wish everybody the best this holiday season and that everybody's safe and gets time to spend with their family. My prayers go out to each and every person to achieve that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kraft. Mr. Mellinger.
It's been an honor and a privilege to serve as the president of the board for the past year. I realize that I have worked now and actually helped select 3 different superintendents in the year. I've spent a lot of time with attorneys this last several months. And I appreciate the fact that God has given me the opportunity to serve on this board. I get asked sometimes, why does somebody serve on the board that does not have children in the school district? I'm a pastor in the community. I care about this community. I'm involved and I believe in this community. And by the way, I'm looking forward to whatever presentation you guys are going to make with the pack in a few minutes. So if you're not getting up to make a presentation, you better. Good. The band and choral concert was amazing. We have an honor student in the middle school, a student in the middle school who is first chair in an honor band. That's incredible. First chair. I want to say that having served as president this year, I believe in the needs for this bond. We have got to do the things that are going to make our facilities secure. And I trust that every staff member recognizes the significance of trying to have better facilities which improve education and make a better environment for teachers, for staff, for all those involved. And so please, we need to, as a school district, work towards securing this bond so we can improve everything about our educational structures and system. And that's facilities, that's the security. The things that have just happened in the last couple of weeks remind us of the importance of security. And we have got to improve that. And the only way we do that is by spending some significant funds. And the only way we're going to get those funds is by going for a bond. And we need 100% support of our entire school district to do that. If as a school district, we're not supported, as administrators, teachers, staff, if we don't believe that we need to fix and improve facilities and make them more secure, then there's no way the community is going to want to support what we believe we need to do. So I'm urging us to work towards that this year. I also want to say that I am deeply concerned about the finances of the future. The state is right now at a 62 billion, my name is Bill, $1 billion deficit. The governor is already talking about $26 billion reduction for education. That is going to affect us in a serious way. And I am really concerned about where we go financially. Like Scott, I care about the teachers, but I also know there's a limited amount of money. And there are a limited amount of funds that we have to try to cover everything that we do. And we're not sitting on large sums of money that we have not spent. And I'm really concerned about what this next year holds. Within just a few weeks, we'll be learning more about the governor's budget and his plans. And they are not very positive. They're not very affirming as we look to the future of finances for education. So I'm greatly concerned. I also want to say that I am thrilled that our scores are improving, but we are still well behind. And we need to continue to look at what we can do to improve student abilities and student scoring. And so students, you're still number one. You're still what matters most. Every student on this campus, every student on all 7, no, how many campuses do we have now if we consider RBA? 7 campuses. And every campus, every student matters. Everyone needs to be treated individually and assisted individually and guided. And then as a group, we need to work to improve. I'm thrilled with our sports program. I'm thrilled with our theatrics and our drama and our band and our choral and our artwork. Oh my goodness, the gifts of students in this student and population are incredible. And we need to assist them all. So Jim, what you do really matters. And what we do to help you get the resources to do your job is very important. And all of us can have a say in that this year as we move towards the bond. And lastly, I'd just like to say to those who celebrate Hanukkah, it's a wonderful time right now. Happy Hanukkah. To those of you who celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas and God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. We'll move on to 11.2, interim superintendent's report. Dr. Rutherford.
Adding to my inappropriate comments I made earlier in the agenda when it was not the time to make those comments. I think I will figure out your agenda about time when it's time for me to turn over the keys to the new superintendent, but I'm working on it. I do want to give the board a little update in our community. Last meeting was brought to the board's attention, and since then we've had some communications from concerned community members around the appropriateness of some books in our school libraries, how those books are determined, who it is, how they challenge a book if they're concerned about it. I want to tell you, since that meeting, Jen Whiteside has been working very closely with Lynn Cloffer, our district librarian. They've been collecting artifacts of procedures and processes from other organizations. We've had some support. Cindy Gardner brought some things back from CSBA. Jordan brought some things back from, I believe it was the county library, that we're using and working with the subcommittee who's going to develop some guidelines. So when a concern does come forward, there's a proper channel and a formal process, an agreed upon protocol to make that determination of whether or not the book has value enough to be in one of our libraries or in a classroom. So we don't have a report ready, but just want you to know those gears are in motion. Everyone who has reached out to us to express a concern receives a direct communication back. So board members, thank you for forwarding anything you might receive to our attention so we can make sure we close that loop. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to 11.3. At agenda item 2.2, when we started our first open session meeting this evening, we went ahead and moved 11.3 to items 3.6 under our annual organization area. So this made a little bit more sense for us, and that is the 2024 schedule of regular board meetings, workshops, and our board retreats. So if you want to look at that, it is on the board agenda packet on the website, and we will also post it as we usually do in our on our actual website itself. For 11.4, we at item 2.2, we went ahead and moved that to 3.7, and that's just a review of our governance calendar. Again, that is in the board packet if anyone wants to review or take a look at that. We'll go ahead and move on to 11.5 now, a legislative update report from Trustee Harding.
So everything right now is about the budget because everything is on, the legislators are on break till January when they go back. So I'm not going to rehash the $68 billion deficit. What we were discussing in Sandabs are possibilities that may come up in the January budget proposal by the governor, because we are still getting tax returns in, because the tax deadline was extended all the way to November 15th. The numbers are not hard and fast numbers in terms of the revenue that we received. So as Kevin Gordon from Capital Advisor says, it's really a revise of the May revise. That was the best guess budget. So that's kind of what we're looking at, is still something that is working with best guesses in terms of revenue. But what the Legislative Analyst Office did say, as reported, is we're about $68 billion in deficit. We do have a rainy day fund. They could use some of the rainy day fund to offset those losses, but there's still a huge loss of revenue. Then in regards to Prop 98, which is where we receive our education fund. Prop 98 is this awesome pot of money that we hope grows every year. They have a reserve of $8.1 billion. And they could say, oh, we'll use some of that reserve to offset budget cuts to education. They can only use up to $7.7 billion to offset. Hopefully that happens. They can't use the whole reserve, and then it has to go and be rebuilt. The interesting part is in Sandabs, the worst option is if we go and are funded at the baseline, then we're looking at tremendous cuts to education. And we know then we're going to have to literally get therapy sessions and pick Jenny up off of the floor, because it's going to be the worst case scenario, including some mid-year cuts, which haven't happened in a very long time. We also will be looking at deferrals again. which again, we don't like deferrals. That means that they don't pay us in this fiscal year. They wait to make that the payment till after June 30th, which is also not a stellar situation. We don't like deferrals. If they use reserve, and they're probably going to take a lot of the one-time monies that have not been dispersed yet, but there's also a possibility that the money that for programs that we already received, they may take it back. They may take back one-time monies to balance the budget, which there are so many programs that districts have already spent. They already hired teachers for some programs. They've already started the whole process, maybe a year, 2 years into the program. And so if those funds are taken back, districts are going to scramble to see if they can sustain the programs that they implemented with the one-time money. So there isn't any great solution. There's just baddest solution in trying to balance both the state budget and the education budget. So that is really the biggest conversation in Sandabs. We know that the governor has his most important early childhood education, universal kindergarten, that preschool, that kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see what he decides to cut in his best guess January budget. In regards to other legislative issues, like I said, the late start bill is coming up again in terms of the impacts of districts, both at the CSEA level and at Sandabs. We're having conversations about Yucaipa-Calamasa really has done a lot of work to see if they can requalify itself as an exempt school district. There are challenges with the implementation of late start with no money attached to the bill. We were just supposed to implement it, figure it out. You're smart enough. It won't cost you any money because you guys are really smart. Really, that's really disserving school districts by saying something like that by the author of the bill. So it's just interesting that it keeps rearing its head, that this bill had great impact, and we're still feeling it as we go along. So we're going to see if maybe, I know that there's advocacy still on the level, on the state level against this bill. In terms of federal funding, expect flat funding. Really, that's all it is, flat funding. We're lucky to have that. Sandabs did set a meeting up with the assistant secretary in the Department of Education, focusing on special education services. One idea, because we're never going to get the promised 40% in special ed, as promised in the IDEA Act. One solution to funding, I think I mentioned it before, is funding for ADR, which is the alternative dispute resolution process. And that was mentioned to the assistant secretary that maybe that should be a focus of conversation in future budget bills as a way to offset some of the special education costs. We might not get it in the special ed, but maybe we'll get it in an ADR funding, maybe. So that was a solution that was presented by someone from the county office that I think is a great idea. So all those proposals, but there's really no bills right now to discuss. We'll be starting those in January and February. It's all about the budget. Everybody is talking budget.
Mr. Chairman, information? Yeah, a couple of things. One is I had parents ask about a template letter, a sample letter that they could send, and who should they write to right now, especially regarding the finances and the concerns.
Assembly member Tom Lackey,
Our assembly.
our assembly member, and our senator Ochoa Boat. Those two definitely. I would also send it to the governor's office. Everything should go to the governor's office. Anything that's officially sent is it becomes part of the record keeping, by the way.
Is there some way that we can put something like that online and even maybe a sample letter?
We had a sample letter,
Things have changed though, and we're talking about a very different issue.
I can take a look at that and, yeah, take a pass at updating and revising it if we want to do something like that.
I think that we should, because I know that Capital Advisors is saying that there needs to be some heavy advocacy to try to rebring the conversation in regards to education cuts, especially if we don't want to see the governor decide to go baseline funding, which would be devastating for every single school district.
I do have a couple questions in terms of, you mentioned deferrals, and Jenny, would you be willing to share, just describe what it means to have those deferrals?
Yes, thank you. I'm over a cold, but as I talk, I tend to, it seizes up still, so forgive me if I also have a throat drop. So what a cash deferral is, it's not a budgetary item, it's a cash flow item. So what the state does is they hold back the payments, that, just like Cindy said, to the school districts on our apportionment schedule, which is our payment schedules. So it becomes a cash management problem than a budget problem. So where we will still receive the same amount of funds and we won't have a reduced amount of budget, but we would have the cash paid in a future year, sometimes up to 12, 18 months in the future. So it becomes a, you know, especially for a district like ours, it's not as crucial because we have about 64% of our total funding does come from property taxes. And so we're not as reliant on the state aid portion of LCFF because we have the tax revenue. And so we have some of those twice a year guaranteed payments. But we have in the past had to have bridge loans. And we've had to have to borrow money, issue things that are called a trans, or, you know, at the time there was other funds such as, you know, adult ed funds or deferred maintenance funds that we don't have anymore that we have to borrow from, and then you have to pay back within 120 days. So we have some financing costs if we need to borrow cash, but it becomes a cash management other than a budget reduction. We prefer deferrals over a budget reduction because then we're not cutting, you know, positions. We are managing cash, which may mean that we have to delay a purchase, but we can still make that purchase, or we have to have those borrowing costs. So if we had to pick one, we would want the deferrals, but it's still, you know, it becomes we haven't had to watch our cash as closely. We do weekly, anyway, and I report that to the county 3 times a year what our cash balances are. But it becomes you know, we have to make sure we can pay utilities and payroll, you know, and we have to monitor when we will have a cash shortfall then and have to borrow.
So in a nutshell, with the deferral, we need to continue to pay our obligations, but we're getting delayed. We're getting our funding from the state months later than expected. They're able to place some gains financially in terms of their budgeting and putting it into future years, yeah, as far as when they're putting it on the books, but we still have to pay.
So we still recognize the revenue in the current year. They get to recognize the expense in the future year. So when you have a traditional accounting background, you're kind of going like, well, that doesn't really make sense. But it's a kind of an accounting trick that the state does. In that way, it would be like us not getting our paychecks, maybe, but you know, having to say, okay, we'll pay you in 3 months.
But it could also be kicking the can down the road for the state if they do go to deferrals, where they will still have to pay those obligations and they're counting on future monies.
Correct. Absolutely, 100%.
Well, not cool. And then the other question, you had mentioned the federal promised 40% for special ed, which perpetually has been how much the feds had said they would subsidize special ed. But do we get like something like 2%? Or
No, it's more like, I think for California, it's 8%.
8%? Okay.
I was thinking it was just over 7, so right.
Okay.
in there.
Yeah, and there is no proposed, and like I said, we're funding at last year's level, so flat budget. No spending and no revenue increases. And there is still talk of that 80% cut to Title
I
I.
was going to say a flat would be a blessing because they were talking about the cut to
Right.
Title I, but if they're still talking about flat and then a cut to Title I,
Yeah,
that's.
it hasn't all been reconciled, and we'll see how it all plays out because they keep doing the what's the budget? What do you call them? This starts with a C. What's the C word? And not that C word. Budget resolutions. Sorry. Budget resolutions. I'll just say that. I can't remember the word.
CRs?
That's it. Thank you.
Continuing resolutions.
Yes.
What was it, Jordan?
Continuing resolution. Sorry. I knew I would get there. I'm getting tired. So anyways, the other concern I guess Jordan and I have is, you know, all these monies that we receive, ELOP, the arts grant, all these things that are one-time monies, if they haven't been dispersed, they're gonna be taken. Then if they have been dispersed, they may take them anyways. And the concern is that there's been commitments to that money. Programs have started, salaries are being paid, and all of a sudden we have to stop doing that program if we don't have the money to cover that program. So that's concerning, is how do you reconcile mid-year these issues? And I think that's what's concerning, is nobody knows what's gonna happen.
Anything else? Exciting stuff, legislative updates. We'll move on to 11.6, our student representative report. I am Chang, River World High School. By the way, I saw your name on the concert sheet, so it was wonderful to be able to go to that event. Go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you. This presentation is for the December school reports. Starting off with the elementary schools, on December 20th, VOE's TK, kindergarten, and first grades will be performing their holiday celebration songs for family and friends. On the 21st, the entire school will gather for a holiday celebration of songs. On Friday, the 8th, VOE gathered to duct tape the principal to the wall and gave her a pie in the face. It was the end to a great fundraiser and fun for all. CHG also welcomed TK and kinder parents for a fabulous Thanksgiving feast. Last night, CHG and the Running Springs Fire Department held their annual Santa event with free hot dogs, hot cocoa, and punch for everyone in the community. On December 21st, CHG will again welcome families for our holiday performances. One of our favorite songs, Hoffman Elementary Christmas, will be accompanied by Mr. Steve Lawless, a CHG tradition. LAE opened a new kindergarten class after fall break, and the students are doing amazing. Our PTA held two successful fundraisers, Believe and Reindeer Lane, where students were able to shop for friends and families. We have two upcoming holiday events involving kindergarten and third grade next week. Moving on to Mary Putnam Hank Intermediate, MPH band students shined with the Blue Jay Parade on December 2nd. Both the beginning band and the MPH advanced band had a second performance alongside Rim High's concert band on December 7th. They did beautifully. 8th grade Avid students went on a memorable field trip to Cal State San Bernardino on December 7th. Students shared their positive experience and excitement. This week, MPH PTA has opened a holiday gift shop. Students have the joy of choosing their own special holiday gifts for family and friends. MPH is hosting their first No Tardy Party. Thank you, RHS, for the idea, on December 21st. Students who have no more than one tardy will participate in a special lunch and get a treat from Mr. Gomes. Can't wait to report a success at the next board meeting. And lastly, Rim High School. RHS hosted its first ever college application celebration. Seniors that applied to a four-year college, rated through the halls, were served the Jersey Mike's lunch, and are celebrated for this great accomplishment. Next spring, we will celebrate all paths our senior takes. Congratulations to RHS Band and Choir for spectacular performances last week. RHS musical talent was on full display, and both nights had a packed house. Shout out to RHS Boys Soccer and RHS Wrestling for tournament wins. Boys Soccer won the Loma Linda Academy Tournament, and Wrestling won our very own Beresford Tournament. It was a great way to celebrate Coach Beresford's legacy. Finals are next week. The work done by RHS teachers in their PLC time has led to greater alignment in instruction and consistency in assessment across the site. Teaching and learning are improving. And that concludes the December school reports. Happy holidays, everyone.
So Diane, real quick, you participated in the college application celebration. What were your thoughts on that? This is the first time, so what's your feedback?
It was super cool, and for me as a senior, it was really heartwarming to see like all my fellow students and like past teachers like kind of support me and like guide me to like this next part of my life. I think it's really great.
And pom-poms are involved, right?
Yeah, that was the best part.
That's what I'm talking about.
Thank you so much, Diane. We'll go ahead and move on to 11.7, Educational Services, presentation for the recognition of Bill Hewitt for the renovation of the Performing Arts Center. Brian Williamsy, School Impact Academy, by the way.
You ready for your call? I brought professionals tonight that actually know what they're talking about as far as ACF grades go, so I'll just explain half that I know and they'll explain, actually all the cool stuff that actually happened. So we just wanted to provide you guys an update about the PAC renovations that have occurred. I just want you to know that if you ever find, great sums of money to spend on the district, Jim can spend it like that. And it's just done. You wake up in the morning and it's done. It's amazing. So as soon as you find that pot of gold, Jim's your guy. All right, last year, the district put in approximately $60,000 into the Performing Arts Center out of the one-time funding. The purpose of this were for some electrical grade upgrades and sound improvements. And it was basically out of the area of really deep need of the PAC was built in 1994. And there haven't been any real significant structural improvements in the facility in 30 years, and things get old. We were able to take that $60,000 investment from the district and then write an additional grant from the San Manuel Band Mission Indians, and they were able to supplement it with about another $80,000. So we put in about $140,000 into the PAC, and due to some, local connections, we were able to stretch that actually remarkably far versus hiring a theater contractor, however that works nowadays for all the theater people out there. Just some of the work that we've had done to the PAC, most of it, like I said, was in the electrical world. We upgraded the stage electrical to support the transition to LED lights. We upgraded the stage lighting across the PAC, the stage lights that were there before. We had to do that awesome thing where you took the filter out and we wanted to change it to green. We had to now it's all digitally controlled and all kinds of cool stuff, which I'll tell you about in a minute. We completely replaced the communication systems for stage workers. We repaired and replaced lights throughout all the halls and rooms, less dreary haunted housey, which is really nice. We installed screens in the backstage, lobby, dressing rooms, and room 114. So basically there's screens posted all around what's happening on stage, both to help the people in the lobby as well as help people in dressing rooms, as well as help the people in the classrooms. We placed the hard drive and the lighting control board. That was actually my first experience of the depths of the PAC is when I walked into the box and the Nikolai there had the whole light board in 1,000 pieces going, this is the problem. I don't know what it is, but it sure looks bad. And then they installed all new software for the lighting. One of the coolest things that I think is just awesome is they installed a classroom lab where they're able to 3D model the stage and preset up the lights that go on. They'll should tell you all about it, and the list just goes on and on and on. So, who's coming up? Who's up? Ethan, is it you?
Just.
Oh. Justin did help, so he helped me with all the picture taking. So we're gonna go through some pictures and Justin's gonna kind of explain what it looks like from the student perspective and what the students are able to do with the new upgrades, which were not capabilities in the past.
Hello. Well, I mean, this not very professional. So this is kind of like our new software, right? So as you see in the right picture, the top right, there's colors, and you can also change like the width of, your beams. I mean, was not prepared. But yeah, no, we just got some really cool stuff. It's so fun using these programs. I'm very fortunate to have been able to use them. Sound got some upgrades. I don't really know about that.
Light guy, now here's some lights to tell them all.
Oh, here. Well, there's me. So the lights are just really cool. When I started learning about it, of course, that was last year. And we had gels that we had to put in, like he said. But now just press a few buttons and you got a bunch of different colors, and it's really just, it's fun. It looks great. So yeah.
So is this a picture taken from the booth itself?
Yes. Well, the one on the left.
And
Oh, cool.
yeah, and this is just gives you an idea. We had a whole bunch of, we were just playing in the booth and all the different lights that they can do. I mean, it really adds a lot to the shows, what they can see, and it adds a lot of depth. The capabilities of the lights are just spectacular, of everything from the top lights to the side lights. And it was done in a way that it can all be controlled digitally now, and they can pre-build all of these, for the shows and model it all before and have a greater capability beyond what they had, previously. So that's what's really spectacular about it. Since Justin's our light guy and our sound guy, we have communications now. So there's communications that can be occurring, all the way through the entire facility. They have these really cool new headsets that look really awesome. They used to do the old walkie-talkies. That's communication that can happen between the sound and the lobby. And there's just a lot of capability that was not there before, which is more closer to industry standard. And that's ultimately what we were going for. And so this was my favorite part. So you want to explain how the lab works?
Yeah, sure. This is actually how I learned like most of everything. So it's the same program as before, right? But it's a little more updated than what's on the light board. And we have a simulation on the right monitor, and you can pretty much do anything on here before you do it on stage. So it's a lot of help when trying to record a show, like while people are on stage, right? That's very difficult to do. If you have actors trying to do something and they don't have light for a bit, they get a little angry. So this was a lot of help, and it's such a cool setup. And yeah, I don't know what else to say.
Okay, can I ask you a question real quick? So are you a senior now?
I'm a junior.
You're a junior. Is this a field you're kind of planning to go into when you're graduating?
I'm thinking about it. It's just such a cool, industry in general. I got to work with Bill, which I think you mentioned. And that was a great experience, and I learned a whole lot, and I think it's definitely a very interesting field.
And so one really neat thing about the lab, like he was saying, is that this is all done in advance of the show in a different location. So it's basically doubling the amount of time that we're able to give the students, because while one half is in working on the, back end side of the show, the other part can be on the stage rehearsing. And those two things don't have to be in combat with each other. So it's just an extra capability where it expands the capabilities of what we're able to offer to the students, which is really, really remarkable. So, one thing that we wanted to be sure to point out is this, like we said, was about $140,000 investment. This was far, far, far beyond $140,000 worth of work that was completed, and most of it was very technical work that was well beyond anyone's knowledge or capability. We're very fortunate to have a community member. His name is Bill Hewlett. He's been working on the PAC for how many years now? He literally was driving by the high school one day and said, "That looks like fly rails," and stopped and poked in, and next thing you know, we had a huge supporter. And we didn't even know what we didn't know other than, the PAC needs help. Everything from proposal writing to creating the orders, installing the stage lighting for us. He created a website with all the old blueprints of the PAC on it, so we have access to it and it's preserved digitally. He managed the project. He helped us organize the facility after we got all this stuff in, as well as training of the students and the staff. He really went above and beyond, and honestly helped us in a way that we wouldn't have even been in the same universe of what we were able to offer the students, based off of the amount of money that we put in. I mean, I can only imagine if he was actually charging us what it would actually cost us to do. But it's just been a fun side project, and he wanted to do it to help the community. And he's been in the business for a very, very long time, running shows for very, very, very big names. And he just saw it and wanted to help. And that was truly, truly, truly remarkable. So, we just wanted to take him on. He wasn't able to be here tonight, but we as the site went ahead and got him a plaque, which Mr. Nicholas will be taking to him. It just said, "In appreciation, River World High School proudly recognizes Bill Hewlett for your tireless efforts and improvement of the Performing Arts Center. Your work has impacted countless students through 2023. It has our logo and the theater logo on it. It really has allowed us to stretch those dollars further than we could have ever imagined. And this is just part of the upgrade that, I was able to understand and wrap my head around. There's all kinds of contractors and lights and wires and ballasts and all kinds of things, which I'm sure none of this could have happened, the cool stuff that I understand without the inner workings, but it was because of Bill, and we really just wanted to take a moment to appreciate him and give you guys an update about where the status of things, especially now that they've been able to do a full play with all the upgrades in place. So.
Thank you all so much. Thank you all for being here, and very much a big recognition and thank you to Bill Hewlett for donating that time and effort to getting us a PAC that is deserving. Their students deserve. So thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move on to 11.8 Business Services, update of budget and enrollment report by Ken Haberlin, Chief Business Official.
I just wanted to ask the students while James coming up, how many of these students are going to go into a field that's related to theater or?
That's great.
You can do all the costume design for Nightfall, just to let you guys know. Really? That's his area of interest. Fantastic. Yeah.
What's up next? Do you know what the next performance is gonna be?
We're gonna do a competition piece on January 18th up here, and then the competition is actually going to be the 20th.
Yeah, the 20th.
The 20th, so 2 days later. I believe that's a Saturday.
At the
And it's
theater?
at Upland High School, and we're performing 4 a.m. by Jonathan Dorff. And our spring production, it's not gonna be a musical this year. It's Clue, which is a very famous production.
I'm very excited about Clue. I love that game. It's one of my favorite games ever.
You got having different endings or a single ending?
I haven't read the ending. Personally. I didn't get that far yet.
Thank you.
Follow that.
You don't want to say through.
There's no following. Although when I was in drama, when I was at RIM, the the stage was where the resource rooms were now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was there,
That's
so.
when that funky stuff is the way it's all.
Jeff Hubbard was my drama teacher, and I was
Oh, wow.
actually in a production at RIM.
What was it?
Food Ritter Anthology. It was very dry for high school. Yeah, but we all played dead people, so it was about fun. So. Okay, well, thank you. Definitely a hard act to follow. I agree, but you've all made my job a little bit easier because you've talked so much already about some of the budget news that's coming up.
The doom and gloom, as you say.
So, thank you for, being so educated yourselves. I told you before, you make my job a lot easier too, because we can, have all these discussions. But why we are here today is that we are presenting in an action item, the first interim financial report. And that is, each year before December 15th, by Ed Code, we have to certify our financial position and report to the board our actual activity through October and 31st, and then our current working budget. So, and as you know, a budget is an evolving document. It can change day to day. The minute I print a budget, we'll get something the next day that will change. A dollar amount down to minuscule, couple dollars to some significant, and as we move throughout the year. So today we have the report of enrollment and first interim. And just I'll flip through some of these slides real quick. What is the purpose of the report and what does it contain? Our enrollment, of course, runs, determines what our attendance is by kids coming to school. And that is a large factor in our total revenue. So, each piece of the data has impacts another. So as our enrollment grows or shrinks, attendance will grow or shrink depending on, our kids coming to school and their attendance rates. We have our actual activity. And then we also have various financial assumptions that get built into our budget. And we are assuming certain things like COLAs and what our COLAs are for the current year and subsequent years. So as those change, our budgets will change. And so the first interim has been built on certain assumptions that were part of the enacted budget, and it does not, I had a slide on this earlier, does not include some of the things that we are hearing in the last week or two about what's coming up in January and the potential for the governor's proposal. When we report our second interim financial report, that updated information will be part of our second interim that it will be presented in March. Okay, we are certifying a positive certification. A district can have three types of certification: positive, qualified, and negative, and we're certifying positive. And it's all, largely what we do in business, is under District Goal 6, which is the budget, infrastructure, and resources. Okay, our current enrollment. We are through month 4 of our attendance month with 2,856 students. Because this was a cutoff date of November 29th, we did run enrollment as of last week. We increased just by 4. We're, at 2,860. But we want to have every good news. 4 more kids is 4 more kids. So. And our current ADA at 2629.40. We are running at 92% attendance rate. That's much better than the post-COVID years, but it's also still below the state average, and it's below what our expectation at RIM is, which is trying to strive for our 95% or higher. So we do have our Strive for 95. And RVA is the highest at 88%, but at 97.84. But our brick and mortar schools, you know, with kids coming to school each day is I'm sorry, I didn't write down what school I was looking at. Like, go ahead, okay. I was like, my notes didn't write down what school at 93.71. So we'd like that to be a little higher, but we're also happy not to be in the 88, 89, 90% also. So, we talked earlier about the budget committee, and one of the suggestions and comments from a teacher that's on the budget committee is doing more to incentivize kids coming to school. And what can we do as a district to have incentives and try to get that attendance up? And so there does tend to be a statewide and nationwide kind of lull in getting kids to school. And what can we do to recoup some attendance or just incentivize coming to school in the first place with Saturday school or attendance parties or having the activities on what will bring students to school besides just that mandate. So that's something that we need to look at, because we do have yes, we can't control what's happening in individuals' households, but ADA is something that we can, as other entities and the state, make changes that impact our budget. We do have some control over the attendance rate and doing things to increase that. So looking at revenue enhancements while we possibly look at expenditure reductions is something that we used to as a district before the COVID, be a little bit more mindful and have some energy behind. And so moving in that direction is something that we would want to start having those conversations with our stakeholders.
Along the lines of ADA, one of those things that I'm hopeful will help improve attendance is the demonstration project that Mountain Transit has introduced, adding a stop at the high school that comes a little bit later in the day. So if you missed your bus coming to the high school, you can hop on Mountain Transit's bus and it'll still get you there, and you can still have at least most of the day at school. And it's also perfect for the late start seniors. So that demonstration project's off to a really strong start. I was talking to their general manager and she's really impressed with it. With those types of numbers, it's the type of it is a type of ridership they would make it a permanent thing going on into the future. And I would look forward to Route 2. That's the one that currently goes to the high school. I'd love to see Route 4 also connect, which is from the Running Springs area. That's very exciting way to hopefully help increase a little bit our attendance.
Yeah, they have also the later bus from the high school that'll, but the same thing, it goes from the hospital down to Crestline, but doesn't go up to Running Springs. So I'm hoping that they do the same thing, because it allows for after school tutoring to actually happen for those students that don't have rides. So just something. Community partnerships. Yay!
I think that stop is successful though. So that's exciting, and I'm really glad that we were all able to work together to make it happen. So. Okay, our next slide, just wanted to touch on, and I highlighted our 11th graders here because we've had conversations in the past about, what does our future enrollment look like, and as just natural, even if no one leaves our district, larger classes exiting, graduating, and smaller class sizes coming in to replace them. And so we used to, in the past, look at some of those, we would call them kind of bubble years, where there was 100 more kids than any other class around them. And I know my son was in one that was not only the biggest class at the time, but all boys, so we kind of watch some of those classes as they go through the school district. So just wanting to have some data for you, and looking at our natural attrition through, in next year when the 11th graders will be seniors. And then after that, when they graduate, there, is a 70 plus student difference between, the classes that are replacing them. So, and what impact will that have on our enrollment? So keeping in mind, we could have more kindergartners come in, and we could have more, as TK ages get pushed back a little bit and TKers come in, that's still, we don't have a lot of trends on that yet, but we do know also that birth rates are low and statewide enrollment's low, and the state and the county are predicting lower enrollments over the next 10 years. So something to be mindful of as we look forward on things that are in and out of our control.
I don't remember whether, has the 11th grade having 266 students at this point, has that tracked higher all the way up? Have we seen those numbers going up like in years gone by, or is there been
probably go back because I remember, there was years probably right when you were first a board member, Jordana, when there was like the 5th grade class that we were going and it would be interesting. That was a good idea. I wish I would have thought about it myself. To see, gosh, I wonder if this year's 11th graders is that 5th grade class that we were kind of keeping our eye on at the time. So that would be interesting to see when we have had board discussions over the last, 5, 6, 7 years, some of these other large classes, or do they just dissipate and naturally?
Or possibly our students, I know that there's been some, there's drop off historically from 5th grade to going to MPH, and then there's been a little bit of return going to RIM. Is there also possibly some kind of phenomena there in terms of?
And you look at our 8th graders, or 9th graders this year, our would have been our 8th graders last year. Right. And so, and just seeing how some of those, I didn't bring it, but we did grow in our 9th grade this year. We had a higher 9th grade class than our incoming 8th graders. So new kids to the mountain or Christian school and, charter school kids coming back after that middle school years. Okay, we've since, because like I said, data is only as good as the day you do it. Today, we've actually certified our CalPADS and CBEDS data. So the 2,831 census date, that's since been updated. So in second interim, we'll update that. It isn't that big of a difference because this was enrollment in October. But we do have our CBEDS certified. Ed Services did that. They did a great job. And I think it was a little bit celebrating today too, with getting that completed. It was due by tomorrow by statute. So that's completed. Along with our enrollment count being certified, we did certify our unduplicated percentage count. And I've shared with you in different updates on the journey that has been over the past 2 months on where we started, and some difficulties in the system with the data and making sure we capture every student that we have. And we have last year, our unduplicated percentage was just over 64%. And right now our unduplicated came in at just over 63%. So it's slightly down. And it was slightly down in kind of across the board. Enrollment was a little bit lower. Our EO population was a little bit lower. Our foster care was a little bit lower. But for where we originally were 2 months ago to that 63% was very, very thankful for that. So we
can sleep at night. Is that
we can sleep at night, or else I'd have one more piece of bad news to share. But that was really, we literally had almost the entire district office, all hands on deck, said, okay, but whatever you're doing aside, we're doing nothing but go student by student, and we probably had to do that 4 different times. And so it was everybody recognized how important it was to make sure our data was correct, because it's not just numbers on a spreadsheet. It actually was impacting our funding if the data wasn't correct. So it's a little convoluted in talking about base years and community eligibility provisions and all that, but, we have a plan, we've worked together. I've got a great team who actually typed up a bunch of notes, so in the spring, when we're ready to move forward, we're already a step ahead, so, that was yes, slightly lower, but our enrollment's a little lower, so we would anticipate that. Yeah, any questions on? Okay. And I always start and then I don't know where I am with my notes, so we'll just keep going. So I have a summary of our LCFF revenue. And this is going back to 2013-14, and that's when LCFF came into play from the revenue limit days into LCFF. And the year-over-year change going into each current year and projected subsequent year. So in 23-24, we had an estimated LCFF revenue of just under $38 million, which that is a year-over-year change of 5.06% of an increase to our actual revenue. And we've talked before about talking about revenue in actual dollars and not just percentages on what does a 8.22 COLA represent in actual dollars to us, because a COLA, when the state gives a COLA, it's an increase to the amount per student, not necessarily to your whole budget. So when you have a change in demographics with a UPP or a decline in enrollment, it might be more per student, but if there's less students, it's going to be less dollars to a district. And so moving forward with the statutory COLAs at the time, but we already know my multi-year projections for 2024-25 do have a 3.94% COLA, which we are, hearing that if we have a COLA at all, it would be in the 1% range. And I have a slide on that, but for your reference, you can see our history and our projected LCFF revenue. And along with that, our total LCFF funds, what percent is property taxes? So that plays into our discussion about deferrals. So why a district like ours, when we have a high tax roll and assessed valuation of our district, it does help us if the state does enact some deferrals.
So looking at this slide, the property tax amount is stagnant. It stays the same year over year.
Well, it was whatever actual amount comes in. So we have our actuals each year. So the last time we have an actual amount that we've recorded was 2022-23. For planning purposes, we use that moving forward because it's more of a instead of like an accrual based accounting, it's strictly a cash base. And so it will fluctuate. You can see year to year, it was 14 million and change for 21-22. And then if we go back to a budget report I would have done then, we would have used that 14 million moving forward. So each year we, for our subsequent years, we use the prior year actuals. And then we change that because that's the last actual data we have. So, and for us, you can see that our property tax rolls are a little higher each year, but we've seen higher assessed values. And then the next slide is just kind of a graph of what our total of our LCFF revenue, the components of it, because we do have base grant, our grade span adjustments, supplemental, concentration, and then the add-ons, which are TK and transportation. And one of the things I wanted to just mention is we've talked about this before, but something that we would want to do in the future is identify kind of our base. What is RIM's base that whether it's transportation, we have, library aides. Is it just office staff like ours? As you identify what your base programs are, you can tap into the supplemental or restricted dollars a little bit easier and have justification to use the supplemental and restricted dollars if you've formally identified your base programs. So, and it also goes to advocacy when we say, to increase the base, which what the governor did last year with the increased COLA, increased base funding.
Because it's ongoing.
Because it's ongoing.
Look, we actually pay attention too.
The next page, I'm not gonna read it, it's just the California's definition of what COLA defined. So this is right out of school services. And so, but we talked before, it's it's not necessarily how much we're feeling it individually as a district or a person or a household with how more expensive things are. It's really a change from year to year in the cost of goods. And so it doesn't always translate into, we're spending 22% more on lettuce or eggs went crazy. So it's those fluctuations that we might be feeling it with our pocketbook at home, necessarily, going into a 0 COLA or a 1% COLA, but you're going, wait a minute, things are still costing so much because California doesn't, fund us and view COLA in that manner. Okay, this is, we've had the slide before, and this is just the statutory COLA versus the actually funded COLA. And you can see, since LCFF, we've had years that what the state said they would pay, what they would pay. We looked at going back to the 70s, I think, Scott, and it was like, what's our history of COLA? And in base revenue limit years, you saw a large fluctuations of not only unfunded COLAs, but then deficit of total base revenues. And so since LCFF and our economy since 2013-14, you can see that we've had 0 COLA years, and we've had unfunded COLAs in 2020-21. They then paid that COLA in the next year, where we had a 1% COLA, but then they added the prior year COLA. So that's some of the things that the state will do. But you can see in our subsequent year multi-year projections, which what we've used to compile the first interim report, what statutory COLAs we had in our budget right now going into fiscal year 24-25 and the 3 years after that, the 3.94, 3.29, 3.19, and 3.16. With the current recommendation of, a 1 to 2, and now maybe even less than that.
Zero, did not.
So overnight, you can see that moving from these COLAs to what would be a 1%, and then just you being optimistic and being 2% ongoing. The in red is the annually decrease in total funding of going into 24-25 of over $1 million, 1.5 and 25-26, 26-27, just under 2 and just over 2 in the next year. So a difference between 3.94 and a 1 or a 0 might not seem like a lot. Well, that's just a percent. That's only a couple of percent, but especially a small district. And what that relates to total LCFF dollars is, a large share of our ending balance moving into this year.
We're all
Gary's already had to walk me off the edge a couple of times. Yeah, he's got to know me really quick. But I'm very thankful because he's a very calming voice when we're freaking out. So thank you very much.
Jen, back on page 10, summary of LCFF revenue, I thought it was a 10.85 COLA.
Or is that just
That's a year over year actual increase in dollars.
a year actual dollars?
Yeah, that's
It's
not what the COLA was, but if you go to the, so that 22-23,
Yeah, it was 22.
which we actually received 10% of it, year over year increase. But that's when the stated COLA was 13.26. But that's not necessarily, just like this year, 8.22, it's only 5% actual dollar increase. So when you hear advisors or the county or advocacy, CSBA, capital advisors, talk dollars and not percentages, that's what they mean. Because every district's different, depending on their declining enrollment, their unduplicated count, and their own unique, version of LCFF, since we are funded all differently. We are not getting the same per student as our neighbors. And, we're better off than some, not as good as many. So I tweaked this, those of you that were at the budget committee, I tweaked it since then, because I took some advice from another teacher that was on there, and I was very thankful because, hey, have you thought about looking at it this way? Because we just stole this original slide from FitCamp, and then I thought, good point. So, in the blue bars, you will see that is an actual per ADA, it's our increase, our COLA on the base, on a per ADA level. Okay. So in the 23-24 school year, per ADA, $855.50. But then what are the increases for certain costs? Not every cost, because there's other costs that are higher than this. There's utilities, there's program, things like that. But if we looked at step and column, PERS increase, health and welfare, some of the hot ticket items, things that are talked about the most, and then you equate those into a per ADA, and then compare the two. You can see that when you're a COLA only environment, which we want any amount of COLA we can get, but when the state funds a COLA only budget, it's really flat funding. When you look at other costs that are just on the natural, like second column, like health and welfare, PERS, STRS is leveling out. Thank goodness that they've done that. The increased cost of special ed and the increased cost of special education transportation, and regular home to school transportation. So, when you're talking advocacy, looking at another avenue is COLA only budget is really flat funding, and the district needs to fund higher than their statutory minimum with the COLAs. That's my 2 cents. The next couple pages are just you have in front of you, and the folks have online and in the board, in the agenda packet, 130-page document of our finances. So the next 2 pages are just a summary of our current year working budget at first interim, unrestricted and restricted side of the budget. And so we have from our LCFF revenue, federal revenue, other state revenue, and local. One of the things you'll see is our local revenue is almost $2.6 million higher than normal, and that's because of the sale of the Blue Jay building. But you'll also see so in that we have a transfer out into to Fund 40, which is the $2.8 million. And so to transfer those funds out of Fund 1 into Fund 40 because of a pending roofing project for Rim High School. So that was a prior board discussion and board direction. So unrestricted and restricted side, we pay very close attention to the unrestricted because that is a trigger for our fiscal solvency, but also restricted with all the one-time money. One of the things that doing our due diligence for in the last couple of years, especially with COVID, and looking for some of those arts and music, the block grants, the learning recovery block grants, is identifying as much of our current expenditures that we can, at least on a one-time basis, transfer those costs out of the unrestricted side of the budget to the restricted side of the budget. So there's a lot of work and a lot of discussion on, can this be, federal FTM auditors came in, what would they think, is it a gray area, can we do it? And so those all take place mostly at cabinet level and as we work through. So, and one of the things you'll see is on right kind of in the middle of the page is our retirement, our retiree benefits. And you'll see that that is going down each year. And because we were very heavy in our district on retiree and prior year installment payments for the Golden Handshake. So as some of those obligations are fully paid for, you'll see that and that's just as we fully pay and kind of alleviate some of that debt that the district has. And next year will be our last payment on the STRS Golden Handshake. Last fiscal year 22-23 was our last payment on the PERS Golden Handshake. So you can see that just frees up ending balance for ongoing programs. Okay, and then a snapshot of 24-25 and 25-26. And we are, like we stated earlier, certifying a positive financial position. Picture worth 1,000 words. This is a pie graph of just our total budget and each category. It's hard to see up on the screen, but you can look at your board packet, and if you have any questions, feel free to just give me a call. Okay, and our budget and our multi-year projections are really only as good as the assumptions we make as we build them. So in our multi-year, the assumptions that we use is our total LCFF revenue with the current, it was at the time a projected CVEDs and current enrollment and ADA projections. We update our other state revenue, federal revenue, step and column, health and welfare, staffing as we go through. We look at our enrollment. That determines how much staffing we need. Is there a plus or minus throughout the years? Shannon and I meet on that. In fact, we touched on it today on looking at future year staffing. If enrollment declines, does that mean not replacing retirees as they go? Because then that's also a savings. Because we don't want to be overstaffed, we want to stay definitely within the contract of our staffing ratios. Looking at the ESSER funds, which are the COVID dollars, and just trying to maximize all of that savings that we can. And there's even still some changes that we'll make as we get into March with the second interim. Okay, just a peek at what STRS and PERS contributions per dollar of payroll as we go into 2026-27. You can see that PERS alone to 28.7% is projected to be the amount per dollar of payroll. Then you think of, especially for a classified worker, you have Social Security, Medicare, workers' comp, unemployment, and on the certificated, you have STRS. Some may be in the Social Security system, not all, and then the and Medicare and still unemployment and whatnot, workers' comp. So this information.
So STRS have been flat just because they have done a better job of.
Their rates are harder by statute to change than PERS. PERS board can change them each year. They can change them, in January, we can get an update that PERS rates will change. It can change again in June. It can change over the summer, where it's my understanding that STRS takes legislative action. Okay, so the next slide is the components of our ending fund balance and the amounts that we have in reserve. And you can see, we took a formal action when we adopted the budget on some of these items, but we still do have in our reserve balance, when we had the insurance payout for Grandview, we have our prior year Fund 14 and Forest Reserve. We have set aside some of the proceeds from the sale of the district office and reserved some of those. We didn't transfer it all into Fund 40, and that's because we, did receive a COPS grant, which has a matching portion, so we have to account for our portion there. We have, we had some technology reserve balances that we, may or may not do, but also could match towards, stretch bond dollars if we get a bond, and that is for voice over IP, and some, building up the technology reserve. So when we need new teacher laptops and when we need, desktops in a computer lab or Chromebooks, that we're not trying to scramble and find, the agenda item that's on later. We did a lot of moving around to free up Title I to be able to pay for that. Where, if there is Title I, it's allowable to pay for Chromebooks, but then to have a reserve that we just contribute to each year. So establishing that reserve from the sale, we already had $50,000 in it, but for the sale of the property, we were able to deposit 350 of those proceeds. And then that just saves money in the general fund that we don't have to tap into.
Do you have a question on this slide, or just in general in terms of our expenses associated with Snowmageddon? And I know you've been working tirelessly trying to get a FEMA reimbursement, but is that somehow incorporated in here whatsoever?
No. So the expenditures that from Snowmageddon were closed out in the prior fiscal year, 22-23. We were able to transfer some of those costs that we didn't anticipate any insurance or FEMA reimbursement for, and we used some available unrestricted COVID dollars for some of it. We have an ongoing insurance claim for the property damage. That I believe everything but maybe one or two small things have been accepted. We have a $15,000 deductible for the total event, not per broken item. And then the staffing charges were the highest percentage of that. And we were able to, we worked on that again some more this week. And it's really, we've submitted everything we could at this point to FEMA. They're doing some stuff. We actually do have a lovely representative who's helping us. And even with that, I've never experienced a perceived I've lost my train of thought, but and how much red tape there is. Poor Jim has sat with me, and all of a sudden we're like running around, and we're going, every time you answer a question in their portal, 10 more boxes open up. We're going like, what? We're getting GPS coordinates, we're getting dimensions on antennas that we put in, and where the final mulch was from trees that we felled, and then what did we do with and we're going like, did we have to keep track of that? It was like Jim. Yes. So we're going like, oh my goodness. So no, but so when we get reimbursed for that, because we've already expended it, it will go in as miscellaneous income, and I'll bring that to you to say, okay, because really it was spent last year. It'll be like new funding, one-time funding this year, because it'll just be a reimbursement of a prior year. Okay, our current Indy fund balance, these were in numbers on a prior screen, but just in graph form. One of the things I wanted to show you too, you've seen the slide before, is our deficit spending graph. You can see as we, our unrestricted revenue versus our unrestricted expenditures. And in 23-24, you can see that we're spending, our revenues are higher, but that is because of the sale of the property, and then we've transferred that out. So you see that big, dip. And just, one of the things is being able to live kind of within your means, but then with declining enrollment, or even steady enrollment or slightly decline in COLA only, you can see that the costs outweigh the revenue. Some of our COVID dollars. We touched about this in earlier board comments. This is just a summary of all of our COVID dollars that we've received to date and where we stand with them. This is our last year. So and maximizing some of the expenditures and you know, what we don't spend, maybe we have planned or obligated funds, and if that doesn't materialize, we'll look for the next thing and see what can we move into that account. And there's a couple things to highlight. We have some services to homeless students that you know, that are specific to homeless, and we have some the ESSER 3 learning loss. You see ESSER 3 LL, which is specific for evidence-based interventions. So some of these, the last bit of our COVID dollars, some of them have been the hardest to spend because they were the most restricted, and we've been spending the unrestricted, kind of restricted COVID first. And then this is just a graph. I know it's hard to see up there, but people are asking, you know, well, what have you spent your COVID dollars on? So this is everything that we've actually spent so far from the prior screen, and our could be some you know, POs that maybe we haven't written the check yet, or obligated funds, and the category of where we spent our dollars, and you know, from you know, improvement and repairs to clerical, classified support, you know, non-capital inventory equipment. You know, we got these air conditioner units, we had you know, the air scrubbers, you know, the you know, to clean the air, we backpack sprayers for custodians for the bathrooms. There's things like that we were able to as if a portable heater or air filtration system, we are able to use some of these dollars to do some of those improvements. Okay, so our next step, you know, continue to monitor enrollment in ADA, and because that directly relates to our staffing and revenue. We adjust the district's budget as required. Begin changes based on the governor's budget presentation in January, which I think we're eagerly, I usually go to two. I usually go to school services and capital advisors, although I have a conflict with capital advisors this year. So I know, and so I do have someone in my office going. We just won't be a team going this year. Adjusting the multi-year assumptions as they change, and then continue to collaborate with our stakeholders. And if you have any questions.
No, I just, on the PERS and STIRS, stand-ups went to Sacramento, we had a little chitty chat with a person from PERS, and I learned a lot in terms of they want a healthy fund balance of 80% of what they anticipate to pay out. That is what they are comfortable with. When it drops, because it's based on their investment. So if they have poor investment returns and that 80% becomes 67% or 56%, then they make adjustments, sometimes incredible adjustments, like Jenny was talking about in January, to mitigate the damage done from lack of return on their investments that they were projecting. So that's some of the reason why PERS is the way it is the way it's set up. And then, which I learned a lot. Do you know if there's been an opportunity for us to register for the January presentation? That was my second question, Jordana. Usually the secretary registers us for the school services. Can we please follow up to make sure that we're all registered?
Thought that email came out inviting us to attend to
Yeah,
register, but I thought we were still supposed to register on our own with a button.
Usually the secretary registers us.
I think that might have been the county one that was
There's
sent
the
out.
County one definitely was that, but I thought school services was due.
I will check with Rachel.
Thanks.
I'm registered myself and to go. So you know, I'll see if in my office too, if someone doesn't get an opportunity, we can always trade out attendees. You
I
know,
believe it's probably booked by now. Usually does fill, so we can check.
You're not on mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. I believe it's probably booked by now, but we will certainly check and see and make sure you can get some seats.
Yeah, that just was automatically done over here, so I just realized that as we were discussing that may not have happened with the turnover.
Or it may happen, I just don't know, so I will
Okay.
get back to you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jenny. With that, we'll move on to 12.0 discussions on action items. 12.1 personnel services. Approval of personnel page fiscal impact to be determined by the source unrestricted general funds / personnel / various accounts. The personnel page entails. Perfect. I'll go ahead and open up for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
So you go first. Sorry. Bill's our second here. Any discussion? I'm calling for the vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There's unanimously. 12.2 educational services approval to purchase ASUS Chromebooks licenses and e-waste from BDJ Tech to replace outdated Chromebooks throughout the district. Fiscal impact $320,240. Budget source District Title I funds.
So moved.
Cindy, you go first.
I'll second.
And as our second, I really appreciated seeing this. I know that it's really important to keep our Chromebooks up to date. I understand some of the first Chromebooks that we purchased are no longer compatible with upcoming state testing browser requirements. So it makes sense to replace and update. It also makes sense that we should probably build in some type of sustainability program to keep Chromebooks coming in, make sure they stay fresh. They're relatively affordable and are kind of designed to be replaced every few years or so.
So I have a question. Some of the school sites, they have purchased carts with Chromebooks with their Title I money throughout the years. Are we taking into account, do we make sure that we're checking with the sites on on what Chromebooks, like Jordan just said, just are no longer compatible, that are more than 5 years, they're 5 years or more, and do they become part of that list of replacement for immediate replacement?
So this isn't necessarily about replacement, but about supplementing, because those Chromebooks that may not be compliant for CASP testing are still usable and have a purpose in classrooms. I think the question is, in addition to replenishment, is are we getting close to the point where we may have enough inventory to look at one-on-one take home for students, because those computers aren't being taken out of the system. They're still being used by children.
So then those that are not usable for CASP, they could be going home for kids to be able to do online learning.
That would be one option.
Got it. Okay. I'm just making sure because I know that some of the schools have been, every year they were buying carts with the Chromebooks and they are definitely not happening with the cat, so just making sure that we are on top of making sure that's replaced before the next testing session.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Any other discussion? None, I'll go ahead and call for the vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 12.3 business services approval to accept and sign the proposal from Ferguson's Heating and Air for the food services kitchen air conditioning project. Fiscal impact $94,850. Budget source other locally restricted funds. You have a motion. So Scott's our first. Second.
Seconded.
Anna, open up for discussion here. None, I'll go ahead and call for that vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. 13.0 consent calendar. Would anyone like to pull any of the consent calendar items for a separate vote during agenda item 14.0?
Closing.
Still reviewing. No, you're good. Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and call for let's see, a motion
So moved.
for 13.1,
Second.
He's gonna read them out.
13.2, 13.3, 13.4, 13.5, 13.6, 13.7, 13.8, 13.9, 13.10, 13.11, 13.12, 13.13, 13.14, 13.15, and 13.16. Would you mind redoing that for me?
So moved.
I'm here. Second. Bill first, got second, forgot the order there, thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We'll go ahead and move past 14.0. 15.0 governance team future agenda item planning. 15.1 final audit for the board of trustees to request agenda items for future meetings. I know we just set up our governance calendar, but any add-ons? Okay. Looks like we're good, yeah. 16.0 future meeting dates for our regular board meeting. We have a board workshop as amended. January 4th, 2024 at 4:00 p.m. at Room of the World Unified School District Office 24740 San Moritz Way, Crestline, California 92352. And we have a board meeting on January 25th at 2024 at 5:30 p.m. right here at the district office 24740 San Moritz Way, Crestline, California 92325. Some like, recess to close session if necessary. That is unnecessary, so we'll go ahead and move on to adjournment 18.0. 18.1, your motion.
So moved.
Second.
Cindy's our first, Bill's our second. Any discussion? Do we want to keep this going?
Let's not even start that way.
Let's go ahead and call for the vote here. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.